All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the May 23rd meeting of the Gateway API Gamma Initiative. As always, Kubernetes code of conduct rules are in effect, so please treat each other respectfully. And with that, I will share my screen in a moment, and we have a few agenda items to discuss, so we can get into that. All right. I'm going to assume everybody can see this. And yeah, so we, as always, have an open agenda. So if there's a topic that you'd like to discuss, please feel free to add it to the meeting notes. And also, if you can add your name to the list of attendees, that is always appreciated, so you can keep track of who was able to attend these meetings, particularly as we have two different time slots. So it's good to understand who's able to come to each. All right. So the first topic I wanted to discuss, we spent a bit of time covering it the past two meetings, but basically the kind of path forward for defining the behavior between gateways and east-west HTTP routes, and like when to layer consumer producer rules, things like that. We're intending, I'm proposing that we remove it from the milestone for Gamma HTTP ready for implementers to try. I have been working with Flynn, and we've done a heck of a lot of research and iteration, and basically found that there is a lot of things that are difficult or tricky about it for numerous reasons. Be those technical implementation details, or UX, or cloud provider constraints, or migrating from service discovery to mesh. So we're going to try to advance this GEP as basically like informational. We've done that in the past before with GEPs that start out as like informational provisional, to kind of like share this context publicly and hopefully set the stage for future iteration on this work, but trying to, at this point, not be prescriptive about defining explicit behavior in order to basically allow meshes to start implementing Gamma and have room to kind of figure out what makes sense and what works, and hopefully feedback from actual users will be a part of that. So I don't think I have the ability to edit the milestone, but I think I see Shane in here. Oh, and I guess Rob too. Yeah, so that is kind of like disposition for that. And TLDR of most recent development, Flynn, do you want to share this?
We ended up talking at the last Gamma meeting on some detail about this, about cloud load balancers and all that. I ended up talking, I think, a little bit with Rob after that even. And yeah, I've basically been convinced that it does make sense to recommend routing to endpoints as kind of the default behavior for a gateway API aware ingress controller when working with Gamma. I'm not gonna, it would take too long to go through and summarize all of why, but there's a fair amount of wordsmithing on that one to go through and kind of clean that up and try to render it something coherent. So we'd like to get that out of the critical path for making everything ready to go ahead.
Cool, that's good to hear, and hopefully that can be a second pass, as we've done with prior GEPs, of merging an initial provisional or informational, and then coming back with another pull request to kind of updates and adds prescriptive recommendations to it. Rob, do you have anything to add on that?
No, sorry, I'm just getting caught up, but everything I heard sounds spot on. So yeah.
I don't see John in here. Oh, maybe I do.
I joined.
But yeah, oh, okay, cool. Hi. I just wanted to highlight that your PR for marking gamma gaps implementable has merged. So I think that's really exciting and it's kind of like a big step forward and worth celebrating in this group. We're inching closer to actually having gamma included in a formal release. And I hope that with closing out that milestone that we should be on track to be able to do that for the upcoming 080 release. So yeah, that's exciting. I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
It'd be nice to get gamma on the website more than just it being an initiative.
Oh,
Okay,
yes,
yeah.
that is an excellent idea.
Yeah, I think we've discussed this before, but I am fully supportive and would love to have a whole section devoted to gamma or more, whatever. But yes, please. That's the only thing I'll say. Yeah, would love to see that.
I guess I
Would
kind
you
of
like-
have a. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I was just gonna ask, we should have an issue open tracking that. But yeah, so Keith.
Well, I think I actually have an issue open for that that may have been assigned to me. Oops.
Okay. I seem to recall there was something like that.
Yeah, let me see if I'm assigned this to one of these things and no, yeah, I don't see one. So, but I remember it being like an action item on the maybe I created it but didn't assign it. That may have been what it was. Anyway, my other comment is kind of about gamma and
Before you jump onto that, Keith, can you find, are you going to take the item of finding that issue and assigning it to somebody?
I actually don't think it exists anymore. I did it. I've been looking while I'm talking, and I see one about version clarification in the docs, but I don't see any on making gamma more prominent in the docs. So if you're looking to help, it would be great. Feel free to create that issue if you have such.
I will at least create the issue and then I will further see what I can do.
Appreciate it. But yeah, this is kind of, I'm gonna not go into my agenda topic quite yet, but this, I couldn't see who it was in Zoom, but like when somebody said, can we make it more prominent on the website instead of just an initiative? Kind of got me to thinking, Gamma was, when we started, it was just an initiative to see if we could make this work within Gateway API. I think, we've got around 3 implementations at this point, and we see that increasing. It does feel more like this is no longer an initiative, but rather a full part of Gateway API. I don't know, Rob, Shane, if you feel the same way here. So maybe the doc clarification is less of make Gamma more prominent and versus merge, like make it first class within the Gateway API. I'm not saying it wasn't before, but I'm just kind of thinking about where Gamma fits. We're kind of like this sub project within SIG network. But I'm interested in thoughts about the right, I'm losing the word here, but like I guess the right machinery or orchestration around how we talk about Gamma moving forward. I don't know if anybody has thoughts on that, but it came into my head.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I mean, I think, for example, one of the things we have on Gateway API is a good set of guides. It seems to make sense to kind of interweave maybe some Gamma related guides in there too. Again, I'm not really sure how we structure it, but I feel like it deserves prominent placement throughout. The other thing I've been meaning to say is we've gotten more than just clearance, but actually encouragement to have our Gateway API and I think by extension Gamma documentation of some sort on Kubernetes IO, probably
Nice.
as a reference to, our site. I mean, we could put as much as we want on Kubernetes IO, but I think it's harder to maintain that because none of us are approvers. But at the very least, we should have a good overview of probably the full scope, including Gamma. And if we could have good entry pages for both sides of this, like Gateway API is broad. I don't think we mentioned anything about Gamma on our main page yet. That should be fixed. Many things about our main page should be fixed. And then from there, I think we really need good overview landing pages for both the Ingress side and for the Gamma side, and then some merged content throughout. I know that's kind of hand wavy, but all of that's to say, yes, we need huge improvements there. And I appreciate everyone who's already contributed, but yeah, I think this is a big project, and any incremental steps to get us a bit closer would be very welcome.
Awesome. That's exciting. Yeah, I think that'll be great. And like, I think maybe like linking this to the like 080 release and kind of like as part of moving formally into the experimental channel, like that feels like the right impetus to like elevate this on the website. And yeah, make it formally part of Gateway API. So yeah, I think that's great. Cool. I have just two other topics here on just like issues and PRs that I noticed was stuff in progress that felt worth highlighting to this group. I don't know how much there is to discuss. But first off, Michael Beaumont, if you wanted to talk about some of the conformance work that you've been doing. I saw one thing open for adding mesh consumer groups for Gamma.
Yeah. It's just one test case. It's getting into like the consumer risk producer semantics of Gamma. But I think it would be good to, like you wrote, have other implementations test it. It's passing in Kuma. I don't know, John, what the status with Istio is, but yeah.
Yeah, it failed in Istio, but it was a bug on our side.
Okay.
So I slapped together a fix, which I haven't merged yet, but I think the test is right after some of the fixes you made. So I'm good with merging this.
Cool.
Hey, that's good. A conformance test
Very
patching
cool.
implementation bug. That's what we hope they do. All right. Yeah. That's exciting, and looking forward to seeing this merge shortly. It sounds like. And then John, you opened an issue for dropping the provision to omit backend ref. Do you want to explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, this started out with I think it was a conversation with Rob that it's kind of weird that we say the implementation should allow omitted backend ref. This really feels like something that should either be they must do it or they must not do it. And so I wanted to clean that up, and there's kind of two options. One is not do it or do it. I think personally it makes sense to not do it, so that's what I submitted in this PR. The reason is, which I listed here, is that it's inconsistent with gateways. You can't actually do this with gateways, so it may be a bit odd that you want to have the same type of route for both, and suddenly the backend ref, which is seemingly unrelated to the type, is different. It also limits the ability to have, like right now we have services front end, but we talked about other things in the future. It kind of limits those because it expects
Which may
that they're
not
both the
have
same.
a backend.
Yeah, it's also a bit tricky too because, well, never mind. I forget. There was some vague thing about ports, but I forget the details. So, yeah, those are the main ones I would say.
Yeah, I just had the comment that like this makes the use case of a service parent ref without a port pretty negligible. I don't know if it's possible to just say like a parent ref that's a service requires a port. Is that something we can do? Yeah, here.
Yeah, I think the obvious thing that someone will do accidentally is not put a port on the parent ref and
Right.
then put a port on the backend ref because we say it's required. And now they direct 2 ports to 1 port, and they didn't actually mean to do that.
Okay. that feels like a thing we can probably take a look at and figure out a UX that makes sense for that. But in general, this seems reasonable to kind of remove ambiguity of like, there's two ways to do this. And yeah, it seems to make sense from like the future looking thing too, of potentially being able to target parent refs that don't have backend endpoints as part of them at some point. So. Cool.
I think that I at least am gonna have to think about this one and kick it around with some of the folks over in Buoyant. Yeah.
It does make it slightly more verbose. I
sorry,
guess
slightly
that's
more-
the downside. Verbose for kind of like the simple case.
Yeah, and the trick is that the simple case is the one that we expect most people to be using. And so that makes me wonder if maybe there's another path to the effect that we want here. But yeah, let me kick it around a little bit.
Yeah, one other thing to consider too is the minute they want to do something like Canary,
Mhm.
now they'll have to like, I mean,
Yeah,
this is kind of a small thing. It's like, if I want a Canary to now V2, I would expect to just add V2, but now I have to add V1 and V2, so it's kind of funky.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's actually the use case. That's the particular scenario I'm thinking about, and kind of going like, yeah, it's actually really interesting. So
It feels like it lowers the barrier to initial adoption, but then once you try to do anything with it, it's just as much work anyway.
yeah, that's why, like I said, that's why I want to think about it a little bit more as opposed to opining too much about it right this second. I'm having too easy a time arguing it both ways with myself. So
I've been noodling this for a bit since the PR came out, and I think this is a thing that I was a big fan of when we were initially writing the first draft of the Gamma spec. But I think I agree that it's one of those tricky situations where, yes, like Flynn said eloquently, like it feels like it really helps a user out and has this nice UX win for the new adopter, but over time it actually makes life more difficult. And it's
to be
not
fair, I think that was Mike who said that while we were talking.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Mike.
I mean, I agree with him, just for the record.
Yeah, I couldn't remember who it was. This never mind, that made sense. But yeah, I think that I have found myself like on the other end of this being bitten by stuff like this in the past, where like, oh, it's super easy to adopt, and then to actually mobilize it to do useful things, it's now this extra work or extra burden, or it obfuscates what's actually happening. And so like having being explicit in your backend and sitting 100% of traffic there is not too badly, and it's very explicit like what's happening rather than implicitly taking the parent ref. So yeah, I'm gonna I think I'm gonna read through the specifics of the PR, but I'm probably gonna end up +1ing this.
Cool. Well, good initial discussion, and at least we have visibility onto this for anyone who may wish to opine or dig into this in a little more detail. All right. So that brings us to the end of our scheduled agenda for today. Are there any other topics that we want to discuss before wrapping up?
Just real quickly, I'll mention, I think I've mentioned this in Slack already, but since we're at a similar time zone, around a week from now, plus 5 minutes is when we're having another Gateway API meeting. We're trying another meeting at this time slot. So if you can make it to this meeting, you can hopefully make it to the next meeting. We'd love to get more discussion and definitely more people from time zones that are harder to work with our other meeting times. So yeah, next week at 30 minutes later than this meeting started.
Looking forward to it.
I'll also add that next week is also the near this time slot at the multi-cluster meeting, I believe. And we're looking to I think next week specifically, there's I've got an item on the agenda about the kind of their process for enhancements, and hopefully gonna bring some feedback about potentially bringing that lower. So it's not like this long cap period for getting things into the spec, and it'd be another good place if you got feedback about MCS API or the multi-cluster use cases as it relates to mesh. That's a really good venue to let those be heard. So feel free to come to that as well. And then I've got to follow one more topic from the Gateway API meeting yesterday. With a lot of stuff kind of wrapping up for 080, I think actually the only action item like that we have before 080 for Gamma is the website changes. Now that we're moving the mesh gateway interactions out of the milestone, website's only thing left. So be thinking about what else you think is important for you from Gamma, and be paying attention to the policy attachment discussion that's been happening in kind of mainline Ingress Gateway API world. Rob's got a really great discussion on GitHub about different options for policy attachment. We had some conversation about it yesterday. I know a lot of people here care about policy, so it'd be great to get your feedback in those conversations, so that we're able to take that into consideration as that's iterated on. Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure policy is one of those things that we are wanting to figure out before it gets to stable. I think that's kind of the gist of it.
Yeah, we want to have an approach that we're confident about, is my perspective, before we go GA. There's a discussion that's, I think it's 2012. I don't know. I can't say that policy attachment will graduate to GA at the same time as HTTP route, because I think there are different levels of stability. But I do want to make sure that we're on a trajectory that we're happy with and we feel has a path towards GA. I have my own biased opinion here, but I think there's still different opinions throughout the community. So I want to make sure we respect all of those, and get to a point where we're all happy with the trajectory that we're on, whatever that is.
It is also possible that another couple of folks associated with Gamma have another document going on there, which would be number 2014, I think.
Yeah, the PR I think is 2015, but it's issues 20, whatever. Yeah, they're easy to find in both cases. There's lots of discussion.
2015.
In both. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, that sounds good. We definitely would encourage folks to check out some of the policy attachment stuff, particularly because after we kind of like get the basic functionality of routing east-west traffic in place, one of the use cases of mesh is heavily leveraging policy to do different things. So it's definitely something that I would expect would be of interest to folks in this group, and would encourage you all to check that out to start thinking about if some of the proposed approaches are going to be workable and are going to kind of make sense for how each of y'all have been thinking about applying policy in your various mesh implementations. And if there's gaps or things that kind of like don't make sense, now would probably be the right time to raise some of that. All right. Got breeze through this agenda. I thought it was a lot though. Well, I guess with that, if there are no other topics, we'll wrap up a little bit early. So thank you all so much for attending. And yeah, I'm excited to see Gamma moving ahead to an actual release as an experimental feature of Gateway API. So congratulations and thanks everyone who's participated and helped make this happen. Cool. All right. Take care, y'all, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.